Commander Alexis Chen straightened her Earth Diplomatic Corps uniform as she walked down the long hallway of the Galactic Council station. The metal of her medals clinked softly with each step. The air felt too thin in her lungs, and she had to control her breathing. The artificial gravity was set too low, making her feel like she might float away if she stepped too hard. Like walking on the moon, she muttered to herself, remembering her training at the lunar base. Next to her walked a being unlike any she had seen before. Warrior diplomat Vaxelhor of the Kavaki stood nearly 7 feet tall. His body was covered in a natural armor that looked like dark blue plates. He had 4 arms and walked with the careful steps of someone used to much stronger gravity. His yellow eyes scanned everything with the alertness of a predator. "You feel it too?" Vaxelhor asked in a low, rumbling voice. "This station was not built for beings like us." Chen nodded. "They call our worlds uninhabitable, yet here we are." Both Earth and Kavak had been classified as death worlds by the Galactic Council standards. Planets with high gravity, extreme temperatures, dangerous levels of radiation, toxic atmospheres, or aggressive life forms. Planets where most Council species would die within minutes without special equipment. Yet these harsh conditions had shaped both humans and Kavaki into something the rest of the galaxy found frightening. "They have requested our presence for 3 standard months now," Vaxelhor said. "Ever since our species independently discovered faster-than-light travel within weeks of each other. A coincidence they find disturbing," Chen replied with a small smile. "Is it a coincidence, Commander Chen? 2 Deathworld species reaching for the stars at the same moment in galactic history?" Chen considered this. Earth had developed its first working FTL drive just 6 months ago. The Kavaki had achieved the same breakthrough barely 8 weeks later. The chances of this happening naturally were extremely small. "Let's find out," she said, as they reached the massive doors of the council chamber. The doors slid open silently, revealing a vast circular room. Tiered seating rose in a gentle slope, filled with hundreds of beings from dozens of species. Most were slender or delicate in appearance, with soft-looking bodies and large eyes. Many had assistive devices to help them breathe in what was already a carefully controlled atmosphere. In the center of the room stood a raised platform with a simple table and 2 chairs that looked comically sturdy compared to the delicate furniture used by the council members. As Chen and Vaxelhor entered, a wave of whispers spread through the chamber. Many delegates leaned away slightly. Others watched with expressions that even across species boundaries read clearly as fear. Representatives of Earth and Kavak announced a tall, willowy being with pale blue skin and 6 fingers on each hand. "I am High Counselor Ilara of the Haja Lumiri. Welcome to the Galactic Council." Chen and Vaxelhor took their places at the central table. Chen felt the eyes of every being in the room studying her solid build, her scarred hands, the confident way she moved in what they considered extremely difficult conditions. "We thank the Council for their invitation," Chen said, her voice stronger and deeper than most in the room. "Earth is honored to join the galactic community." "As is Kavak," rumbled Vaxelhor. His voice caused several nearby delegates to flinch. High Counselor Ilara nodded gracefully. "We have called you here to discuss the terms of protective oversight for your species as you join our civilization." Chen noticed Vaxelhor's upper right hand tighten slightly on the edge of the table. She felt a similar tension in her own body. "Protective oversight?" she asked carefully. "Of course," said another council member, a being with feathery appendages and a beak-like mouth. "All new species require guidance as they adapt to galactic standards, especially species from challenging environments." Chen smiled politely. "Perhaps you could explain what these standards entail." For the next hour, the council outlined their expectations: restrictions on military vessels, limits on colony expansion, monitoring of technological development, trade regulations that favored established council species, all presented as benevolent protection for developing species. Chen caught Vaxelhor's eye. The Kavaki diplomat gave her the slightest nod of understanding. They were being offered membership as second-class citizens. "High Counselor," Chen said when the presentation finished, May I ask about the environmental conditions of council worlds? The question seemed to surprise Ilara. Most civilized worlds fall within standard class M parameters. Oxygen, nitrogen, atmospheres, temperatures between 10 and 30 degrees Celsius, gravity between 0.8 and 1.1 standard units, moderate radiation shielding from stable magnetospheres. I see, Chen said. Earth has regions that match those conditions, though many do not. Our gravity is 1.3 of your standard. Our oxygen levels are higher than your norm. Our background radiation would require your species to use protection suits in many regions. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. And Kavak, Vaxelhor added, has 1.8 standard gravity. Our atmosphere contains elements your people would find poisonous. Our daily temperature shifts would cause thermal shock in most council species. The chamber grew noticeably quieter. Yet, Chen continued casually, we built civilizations on these worlds. We developed art, music, philosophy, and science while surviving conditions you classify as lethal. We evolved alongside predators that would hunt your species to extinction within generations, Vaxelhor added. We learned to be stronger, faster, more adaptable. A council member near the front whispered to their neighbor, but in the perfect acoustics of the chamber everyone heard. Barbarians from hell planets. What did we expect? Chen smiled again, this time allowing her teeth to show fully. A predator's smile that humans had learned to soften over thousands of years of civilization. She didn't soften it now. We expected respect between equals, she said directly to the whisperer. We expected recognition that different evolutionary paths create different strengths. We expected diplomacy. The council members shrank back in their seat. Vaxelhor leaned forward slightly. Earth and Kavak did not come here seeking permission to exist. We came seeking friendship and exchange of knowledge. High Counselor Ilara looked genuinely confused. But surely you understand. Your worlds are anomalies. Your biology is concerning. Your cultural development occurred under extreme pressure that shapes aggressive tendencies. With respect, High Counselor, Chen said. Perhaps it's time for the Council to expand its definition of what constitutes a livable world and a civilized species. As the first day of negotiations ended, Chen and Vaxelhor walked out together. Behind them, the council chamber buzzed with alarmed conversations. They're terrified of us, Vaxelhor observed quietly. Yes, Chen agreed. And they don't even know us yet. The Scientific Assessment Committee of the Galactic Council gathered in their sterile white laboratory. 12 of the galaxy's most respected xenobiologists prepared their equipment as they awaited the arrival of the Deathworlders. The air hummed with nervous energy. Remember the protocols, Chief Scientist Neri reminded her colleagues. Her translucent skin revealed the rapid flow of blue blood through her veins, a sign of stress among the Trilaxian species. No direct contact. Full barrier procedures at all times. The laboratory doors slid open. Commander Chen entered first, followed by warrior diplomat Vaxelhor. Both walked with the confident stride of apex predators, making several scientists step back instinctively. Welcome, Neri said, her voice steady despite her obvious discomfort. We appreciate your cooperation with these examinations. Chen smiled politely. We understand your curiosity. Earth's delegation is happy to help you learn more about us. As is Kavak's, rumbled Vaxelhor. Knowledge should be shared freely. The examinations began with basic physical assessments. Scientists recorded measurements and took readings from behind transparent shields. Their instruments beeped and whirred as they cataloged the Deathworlders' biology. Extraordinary, whispered one scientist, staring at the readings from Chen's body scan. The bone density is nearly triple our standard, and the muscular structure. Another researcher examining Vaxelhor's readings shook his head in disbelief. The exoskeleton can withstand pressures that would crush our spacecraft hulls. Chen and Vaxelhor exchanged glances as the scientists continued their work. Neither was surprised by the findings. They had studied each other's species during the journey to the council station, Both recognized the familiar adaptations of life evolved under extreme pressure. "Commander Chen," Neri asked, "would you mind explaining your species' respiratory system? Our readings show unusual efficiency." Chen nodded. "Human lungs extract oxygen from our atmosphere and distribute it through our bloodstream. We evolved to handle Earth's higher oxygen levels and variable atmospheric pressure. Many humans can hold their breath for several minutes if needed, and trained individuals much longer. And your cardiovascular system has remarkable redundancies." Another scientist noted, "Yes, our heart can increase its output by 5 times during physical exertion. Our blood carries oxygen efficiently and clots quickly when we're injured to prevent blood loss." The scientists made notes, their expressions a mixture of fascination and alarm. Vaxilor's examination revealed equally surprising adaptations. His chitinous exoskeleton could filter toxins from the air before they reached his internal organs. His multiple eyes could see across various light spectrums, and his digestive system could break down materials that would be poisonous to most council species. "Your worlds," Neri said finally, looking up from her datapad. "They must be terrible places." Chen frowned slightly. "Earth is beautiful. We have vast oceans, towering mountains, dense forests, and expansive deserts. Life thrives in every corner. But the conditions," another scientist interjected. "The radiation levels alone in your unshielded regions would cause cellular death in most council species within days. And Kavak's gravity would crush most of you," Vaxilhor added. "Your bones would break under their own weight. Yet to us, it is simply home." "That's precisely what we don't understand," Neri said. "How did intelligent life evolve under such conditions? Our evolutionary models suggest that life on such worlds would remain primitive, focused only on survival." Chen considered this. "Perhaps survival itself drove our development. Humans needed tools and cooperation to survive Earth's predators and climate variations. We needed language to coordinate hunting and defense. We needed medicine to treat injuries and illness. Necessity bred innovation," Vaxilor agreed. "The harsher the world, the more ingenious its children must become." The scientists exchanged troubled glances. This concept challenged their fundamental understanding of evolutionary development. The Council had always believed that advanced civilization required peaceful, stable environments, garden worlds where life could focus on cultural and technological advancement rather than mere survival. "We would like to conduct a few practical demonstrations," Neri said after consulting with her colleagues. "With your permission." Both Deathworlders agreed, curious about what the scientists wanted to see. The first test measured physical endurance. Chen ran on a treadmill at increasing speeds while sensors monitored her vital signs. After 30 minutes at a pace that would have exhausted most council species within seconds, her body had barely begun to show signs of exertion. Vaxilhor demonstrated his species' strength by easily lifting weights that required mechanical assistance for the scientist to move. When asked to show his exoskeleton's resistance to damage, he allowed them to test various pressures and impacts that would have severely injured most beings. As the demonstrations continued, more council officials arrived to observe. Word had spread quickly through the station about the Deathworlders' capabilities. By midday, a small crowd had gathered behind the laboratory's observation windows. During a brief rest period, a nervous young aide approached with refreshments. The tray in his hands trembled slightly, causing a container of cleaning solution to tip over. The caustic liquid splashed onto Chen's hand. "I'm so sorry," the aide cried out in panic. "Medical team to the laboratory immediately. Contamination incident." But Chen merely glanced at her hand where the skin had reddened slightly. She calmly walked to a sink, rinsed the solution off, and dried her hand. "No harm done," she said. To the horrified aide, "This is very mild compared to some earth chemicals." The medical team arrived moments later, prepared for a serious chemical burn. They found Chen sitting comfortably, showing them her hand where the skin was already returning to its normal color. "Rapid cellular regeneration," one doctor whispered. "Self-healing without medical intervention." Behind the observation glass, a senior security officer watched with growing concern. He turned to his colleague and whispered words that would soon spread throughout the station. "They don't just survive their death worlds. They embody them. By evening, the Scientific Assessment Committee had compiled their preliminary report. As Neri reviewed the findings, she felt a chill despite the comfortable temperature of her quarters. The data painted a picture that many on the council would find disturbing. Humans and Kavaki weren't just visitors from harsh worlds, they were living embodiments of evolutionary pressure taken to extremes. Their bodies were natural survival, machines adapted to conditions that the council had always considered unsurvivable. The report would change how the council viewed the galaxy forever. It would force them to reconsider what it meant to be advanced and civilized. Most importantly, it would make them question their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Because if these were the children of Deathworlds, what might they become among the stars? The grand reception hall of the Galactic Council Station had been transformed for the cultural exchange event. Colorful banners representing over 30 species hung from the high ceiling. Display areas had been arranged in a circular pattern, each dedicated to a different civilization's achievements. At the center of attention were the newest additions to galactic society, the humans of Earth and the Kavaki of Kavak. Their sections drew the largest crowds, a mixture of curious diplomats and cautious security personnel. Commander Chen stood by the Earth display, watching the reactions of the various council species. She wore her formal diplomatic uniform, but had removed her jacket in the warmth of the crowded hall. Several nearby delegates noticed the defined muscles of her arms, a physical feature rare among council races. "Commander," called a small, frog-like being with large, blinking eyes. "Could you explain this game? It seems unusual." Chen approached the chess set that had been included in Earth's cultural display. "This is chess, Ambassador Greel. It's a strategic game that simulates ancient warfare. Two players command armies and attempt to capture the opponent's king." The ambassador's eyes blinked rapidly. "Warfare as entertainment. It develops strategic thinking and planning," Chen explained. "Children on Earth often learn to play at a young age." Across the hall, Vaxelhor was demonstrating a Kavaki hunting bow to a group of fascinated delegates. The weapon, crafted from materials that required tremendous strength to shape, was impossible for any of them to draw. On Kavak, young ones learn to hunt from their 5th cycle, Vaxelhor explained. "The wilderness teaches lessons that no classroom can." A slender diplomat with 6 limbs and iridescent skin asked, "But surely such activities are no longer necessary with modern technology?" Vaxelhor's mandibles clicked in what Chen had learned was the Kavaki equivalent of a smile. "Necessity and value are different things, council friend. We hunt not only for food but to connect with our world and honor our ancestors." As the evening progressed, the cultural demonstrations moved to the central stage. Each species presented artistic works, historical narratives, or recreational activities that represented their civilization. The Lumiri performed a graceful dance that involved almost no physical contact with the ground. The Trilaxians demonstrated their famous light sculptures. The Zeeth played haunting music on instruments grown from living crystal. Then came Earth's turn. Chen had selected a diverse program to represent human culture. It began with classical music, a string quartet playing Beethoven. Many council IOIs delegates leaned forward, intrigued by the driving rhythms that mimicked heartbeats under stress. Next came a demonstration of human visual arts. As images of Renaissance paintings appeared on the large display screens, showing anatomically correct human bodies, several delegates excused themselves hurriedly. The concept of art, depicting biological forms so accurately, was disturbing to species whose artistic traditions focused on abstract concepts rather than physical reality. "These works were created hundreds of years ago," Chen explained, noticing the discomfort. "They celebrate the human form and our understanding of anatomy." The final human presentation was a brief demonstration of capoeira, a Brazilian martial art that combined fighting techniques with dance. 2 members of the Earth delegation performed, their bodies moving with controlled power and grace. Complete. Silence fell over the hall. The delegates watched in a mixture of fascination and horror as the humans executed moves that demonstrated strength, flexibility, and endurance beyond what most council species could imagine. When the Kavaki took the stage, they performed their ceremonial hunting dances. Warriors moved in perfect coordination, their powerful limbs striking poses that told the story of tracking, ambushing, and honoring prey. The rhythmic stamping of their feet made the floor vibrate slightly. Following this, Vaxelhor shared recordings of Kavaki survival epics, stories spanning generations of struggle against their world's harshest environments and most dangerous predators. The tales were full of sacrifice, endurance, and triumph against overwhelming odds. Our literature celebrates those who face challenges, Vaxelhor explained. We believe that struggle reveals true character. After all presentations were complete, the delegates gathered in smaller groups to discuss what they had seen. Commander Chen overheard fragments of conversations as she moved through the crowd. Did you see how they glorify physical exertion? Their art focuses so much on biological forms. Both species seem to find pleasure in activities that would exhaust or injure us. This last comment caught Chen's attention. She approached the small group of delegates who had been discussing human exercise habits. You seem surprised that we enjoy physical activity, she said. A tall, willowy diplomat with pale green skin nodded. It is difficult to understand. On our worlds, energy conservation is natural. Why would an evolved species deliberately exert itself when not necessary for survival? Chen thought about how to explain. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Our bodies are designed for movement and activity. When we exercise, our brains release chemicals that create feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. You feel good when exhausted? The concept clearly baffled the delegate. We do. We call it runner's high, or the endorphin rush. Many of our recreational activities involve physical challenges, climbing mountains, running long distances, lifting heavy weights. The delegates exchanged glances that even across species boundaries clearly communicated their discomfort with this concept. As the evening wound down, Chen noticed Vaxelhor standing alone near a viewport that looked out into space. She joined him, standing comfortably in silence for a moment. They fear what they don't understand, Vaxelhor said finally. Chen nodded. They evolved to avoid risk and conserve energy. We evolved to embrace challenge and endure hardship. I have something you might appreciate, Vaxelhor said, reaching into a pouch at his side. He produced a small flask made of polished bone. A traditional Kavaki beverage, fermented from the fruits that grow in our highest mountains. Chen smiled and took a small metal flask from her uniform pocket. And this is whiskey, distilled from grain and aged in wooden barrels, a traditional earth drink. They exchanged flasks, and each took a careful sip of the other's offering. Chen felt the Kavaki drink burn pleasantly down her throat. It tasted of unfamiliar spices but had the familiar warmth of alcohol. Vaxelhor's eyes widened slightly as he tasted the whiskey. Strong, he commented approvingly. Your species has good taste. Most council species would find both drinks poisonous, Chen observed. Another thing we have in common, Vaxelhor said. Our worlds tried to kill us. Instead, they made us strong. They stood together looking out at the stars. Two Deathworlders finding common ground in a galaxy that found them terrifying. Unnoticed by either, High Counselor Ilara watched them from across the room. She saw not just two powerful beings, but the beginning of an alliance that might forever change the balance of power in the galaxy. 3 months into negotiations for Earth and Kavak to join the Galactic Council, the atmosphere on the station had changed. Many council members had grown more accustomed to the presence of the Deathworlders. Some had even begun to appreciate the unique perspectives they brought to discussions about trade, science, and cultural exchange. Commander Chen sat in the main council chamber, listening to a debate about resource allocation for new member worlds. The session had been running for nearly 4 hours, and even she was feeling the effects of the station's thin atmosphere. Beside her, Vaxelhor seemed equally uncomfortable, his exoskeleton shifting slightly as he adjusted his position. High Counselor Ilara was speaking about the Council's responsibility to maintain balanced development across all worlds when the first alarm sounded. A high-pitched tone echoed through the chamber, followed by flashing yellow lights along the walls. The council members fell silent, looking around in confusion. "Environmental alert," announced the station's computer system. "Atmospheric pressure anomaly detected in Central Hub. All personnel remain calm and await instructions." Ilara touched a control panel on her podium. "Station Command, this is the High Counselor. What is the nature of the anomaly?" There was no response. The communication system remained silent. The yellow warning lights suddenly shifted to red. The alarm tone changed to a pulsing wail. "Emergency protocols initiated," the computer announced. "Critical failure in environmental control systems. Station-wide pressure drop imminent. All personnel proceed to emergency shelters." Panic erupted in the council chamber. Delegates rose from their seats, some calling out an alarm, others rushing toward the exits. Security personnel attempted to maintain order, but they too seemed uncertain about how to proceed. Chen exchanged a quick glance with Vaxelhor. Both recognized the seriousness of the situation immediately. A pressure drop on a space station could be catastrophic, especially for species adapted to stable, controlled environments. Temperature decreasing rapidly, the computer continued. Oxygen levels fluctuating. Emergency containment fields activating section by section. Chen stood and raised her voice above the growing chaos. "Everyone remain calm. Security teams, begin evacuation procedures for all delegates." As if to punctuate her words, the chamber shuddered, the lights flickered, and a hissing sound began at the ceiling vents. "Pressure dropping," Vaxelhor said, his specialized senses detecting the change before most others could feel it. "We have minutes, perhaps less." Council members began to collapse around the chamber. Their evolutionary backgrounds had never prepared them for survival in extreme conditions. Many species were already showing signs of hypoxia and hypothermia. As the chamber's environment deteriorated, Chen acted instantly. From a pouch on her uniform belt, she pulled out an emergency kit, standard issue for all Earth Diplomatic Corps personnel. It contained a small oxygen mask, thermal emergency blankets, and basic medical supplies. "Vaxelhor, help me get them." "To the emergency shelters," she called out, already moving to the nearest fallen delegate. The Kavaki warrior diplomat nodded and began lifting unconscious council members with his 4 powerful arms. His exoskeleton provided natural insulation against the rapidly dropping temperature, an adaptation from Kavak's extreme day-night temperature variations. Station security forces seemed paralyzed by the emergency. Their protocols hadn't prepared them for a failure of this magnitude, and their own biological limitations were already affecting their performance as the environment worsened. "The nearest emergency shelter is 3 sections away," a security officer told Chen, his voice shaking from cold and fear. "The atmospheric barriers between sections are activating. We may be cut off." Chen made a quick decision. "We need to move everyone now. Help those who can walk. Vaxelhor and I will carry those who can't." As delegates continued to collapse around them, the 2 Deathworlders moved with calm efficiency. Chen's human body, evolved to handle environmental stress and endure physical challenges, responded automatically. Her breathing slowed to conserve oxygen. Her blood vessels constricted in her extremities to preserve core temperature. Adrenaline sharpened her focus and enhanced her strength. Vaxelhor moved with similar purpose, his powerful limbs carrying 2 or 3 delegates at once. His breathing filters, evolved to handle Kavak's toxic atmospheric components, extracted every available oxygen molecule from the thinning air. Together they began moving the council members toward the exit. The station shuddered again, more violently this time. Overhead lights failed completely, leaving only the red emergency lighting. "Warning," the computer announced. "Section seal imminent in this area. 30 seconds to atmospheric barrier activation." Chen looked at the distance to the exit and the number of unconscious delegates still in the chamber. They wouldn't all make it before the section sealed. "Get as many through as you can," she told the security team. "Vaxelhor, help them." The Kavaki diplomat understood immediately what she intended. "What about you?" Chen was already moving toward a control panel near the chamber's secondary exit. "I'll override the emergency protocols and give us more time. Go." As Vaxelhor helped evacuate the remaining conscious delegates, Chen reached the control panel and began bypassing the safety systems. Her training included emergency space station protocols, knowledge the Council had never expected humans to need. The panel sparked under her fingers as systems failed. A sudden rush of escaping air told her that somewhere in the chamber a seal had broken. The pressure was dropping rapidly now. Taking a deep breath and holding it, Chen continued working. Her lungs burned and her eardrums ached as the pressure continued to fall, but her fingers remained steady. Humans could hold their breath for minutes when necessary, another adaptation from their evolution as persistence hunters on a water-rich world. Finally, the safety override engaged. The countdown to section ceiling paused. With her lungs screaming for oxygen, Chen grabbed 3 unconscious delegates and began dragging them toward the exit where Vaxelhor was helping the last of the walking wounded through. The corridor beyond was already in emergency mode, with containment fields creating airtight sections. Through 2 such fields, Chen could see other delegates being helped toward the emergency shelters. As she reached the exit with her burden, a section of ceiling collapsed behind her. The impact sent her stumbling forward. Vaxelhor caught her with 2 of his arms while supporting a semi-conscious delegate with his others. "The structure is failing," he said. "We must move quickly." Together, they carried the remaining delegates through 2 more sections before reaching the emergency shelter. Medical teams were already treating the earlier arrivals, administering oxygen and warming treatments. As the shelter doors sealed behind them, Chen finally allowed herself to breathe normally again. Her muscles ached from exertion and oxygen deprivation, but her mind remained clear. A council medical officer approached with a scanner, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You carried 3 delegates through a section exposed to near vacuum," he said to Chen. "You should be unconscious if not dead." Chen merely nodded, too tired to explain that humans had evolved on a world where survival often meant pushing beyond normal biological limits. Across the shelter, she saw Vaxelhor single-handedly forcing open a pressure door that had malfunctioned, allowing another group of delegates to reach safety. His exoskeleton strained against the metal, the strength in his limbs appearing monstrous to the watching council security feeds. By the time emergency systems were restored 3 hours later, the 2 Deathworlders had saved dozens of lives. The Taudir council survivors watched them with a new emotion, not just fear but awe. High Counselor Ilara, recovering on a medical bed, gestured Chen closer. "Perhaps," she whispered, "we have been wrong about what makes a species truly advanced." 2 weeks after the environmental disaster, the Galactic Council Station hummed with activity again. Emergency repairs had restored most systems to working order. The large observation dome, once cracked during the crisis, now gleamed with new, transparent panels. But something else had changed, something less visible than physical repairs. The way Council species looked at the Deathworlders had shifted. Fear remained, but it was now mixed with respect, curiosity, and in some cases, a desire for alliance. Commander Chen noticed the difference as she walked through the diplomatic quarter. Delegates who had once given her a wide berth now nodded, in greeting. Some even approached with questions about Earth or human capabilities. In her temporary office, Chen reviewed reports from Earth's diplomatic team. The incident had created unexpected opportunities. Several council factions had begun competing for exclusive trade agreements with Earth. "Enter," she called at the sound of a knock. Vaxelhor stepped inside, his large frame filling the doorway. "The intelligence reports have arrived," he said, placing a datapad on her desk. Chen activated the secure screen. Together, they reviewed the findings of their joint intelligence operation, a collaboration that had begun shortly after they discovered their shared suspicions about the accident. "So, it was deliberate," Chen said quietly, reading the evidence that had been gathered. The data was clear. The environmental system failure had been engineered by a faction within the Council called the Purity Preservation League. Their plan had been to demonstrate the danger posed by Deathworlders by provoking a violent or destructive response during the crisis. "They expected us to panic," Vaxelhor said, "to fight for resources or abandon the weaker species. Instead, we rescued them, Chen replied. Not the outcome they anticipated. The final page of the report contained intercepted communications between League members, expressing dismay that their plan had backfired. Instead of proving Deathworlders were dangerous, they had shown them to be invaluable allies in crisis situations. The High Counselor has called an emergency session, Vaxelhor said. All delegates are required to attend. I believe they intend to address this directly. Chen nodded and stood. Then we should prepare our response. The emergency session began. An hour later, the council chamber, still showing signs of damage from the crisis, was filled to capacity. Security had been doubled, with guards at every entrance. High Counselor Ilara opened the proceedings with unusual directness. Delegates of the Galactic Council, we face a matter of grave concern. Evidence has been uncovered suggesting the recent environmental disaster was not an accident but a deliberate act of sabotage. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Chen noticed several delegates from the Purity Preservation League shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Furthermore, Ilara continued, this act appears to have been aimed specifically at our newest potential members. She gestured toward the human and Kavaki delegations. One delegate stood, a tall being with silvery scales and prominent head crest. Chen recognized him as Delegate Sorval, a known League member. High Counselor, these are serious allegations, Sorval said. What evidence supports such claims? Ilara looked toward Chen and Vaxelhor. The Earth and Kavak delegations have requested to present their findings directly. Chen and Vaxelhor moved to the central platform. The chamber grew silent. Everyone present remembered how these two had moved through the crisis with calm efficiency, saving countless lives. Delegates of the Council, Chen began, her voice steady and clear. What we share today is not presented with anger or accusation, but with concern for our collective future. She activated the main display screen, showing the first pieces of view, evidence, communication logs, system access records, material requisitions that made no sense unless someone was planning to damage the environmental systems. Vaxelhor explained each piece of evidence methodically. His deep voice carried the weight of certainty but remained measured and calm. Our investigation revealed that the failure was triggered by a remote signal from within this very chamber. Council members looked at each other with suspicion and alarm. The implicated League members grew visibly anxious, expecting outrage, threats, perhaps even the physical violence their species supposedly prone to. Instead, Chen switched off the display. We understand survival pressures, she said to the hushed chamber. We recognize fear responses. On our worlds, misunderstanding a new species can be fatal. Vaxelhor nodded in agreement. We don't hold biological responses against you. Fear is natural when facing the unknown. The League members seemed confused by this response. They had expected rage, not understanding. One of them, a small purple-skinned delegate, rose shakily to her feet. If what you say is true, why are you not demanding punishment? Your people nearly died because of our actions. Because that would only reinforce your fears. Chen answered simply. You believe we are violent and unpredictable. Reacting with anger would prove your point. Vaxelhor added, but we do expect respect. Our evolutionary paths have taught us patience, not weakness. The implied threat, delivered with perfect diplomatic courtesy, left the chamber in stunned silence. Everyone present understood the message. The Deathworlders could have demanded blood price for the sabotage, but chose restraint instead. That restraint came from strength, not fear. High Counselor Ilara broke the silence. The Council will investigate these allegations fully. If confirmed, those responsible will face consequences according to our laws. As the session continued, Chen observed the shifting dynamics in the room. The League members, once influential, now found themselves isolated as other delegates moved away from their positions, literally and politically. Meanwhile, representatives from several council worlds approached the Earth and Kavak delegates during the recess, speaking in low voices about potential alliances and trade agreements. The very crisis meant to isolate the Deathworlders had instead made them attractive partners. They fear our strength, Vaxelhor observed quietly to Chen as they watched these political maneuvers unfold. But now they also want it on their side. Chen nodded. Fear and respect are different sides of the same coin. The question is, how do we use this new position? Carefully, Vaxelhor replied. Power gained quickly can be lost just as quickly. By the session's end, 3 things had become clear. First, the Purity Preservation League had lost much of its influence within the Council. Second, Earth and Kavak had gained unexpected political leverage. And third, the original plan to admit them as junior members under strict oversight was effectively dead. As they left the chamber, Chen and Vaxelhor were approached by an aide from the High Counselor's office. The High Counselor requests your presence for a private discussion about your world's status within the Council, the aide said with new deference in their tone. Chen and Vaxelhor exchanged a look of understanding. The power dynamics had shifted. Fundamentally, they were no longer petitioners seeking admission. They were now potential allies being courted by a council that had recognized both the value and the danger of Deathworlders. Please inform the High Counselor we would be honored to attend, Chen replied with a diplomatic smile that revealed nothing of her thoughts. As they walked away, Vaxelhor spoke quietly. They still fear us. Yes, Chen agreed. But now they respect us too, and fear with respect is the beginning of wisdom. 1 year after Commander Chen and warrior diplomat Vaxelhor first walked into the Galactic Council chamber, the station looked very different. The once uniform corridors now displayed artwork and cultural artifacts from dozens of worlds, including several pieces from Earth and Kavak. More striking than the physical changes, however, were the political ones. The council itself had been transformed. Ambassador Chen, promoted from her military rank after the successful integration of Earth into galactic society, stood in the newly redesigned Grand Assembly Hall. The old tiered council chamber had been replaced with a circular design where all representatives sat at equal height. The environmental controls allowed for different atmospheric sections, so all species could participate in comfort. Today marked the official welcoming ceremony for 20 newly discovered worlds into the expanded Galactic Assembly. What made this occasion historic was that most of these worlds would have been classified as uninhabitable under the old council standards. Quite a change from our first day here, said Vaxelhor, now serving as Kavak's senior ambassador. He stood beside Chen, both of them dressed in formal diplomatic attire. Chen nodded. They never expected us to refuse junior membership. That had been their first major diplomatic victory. After the environmental crisis revealed the true capabilities of the Deathworlders, both Earth and Kavak had rejected the Council's offer of protective oversight. Instead, they had proposed a new type of membership, equal partners with full voting rights. When the Council hesitated, Earth and Kavak had simply begun forming their own network of alliances. They called it the Adaptive Planets Coalition, and invited worlds previously overlooked or marginalized by the dominant Council species. The strategy worked better than either had anticipated. Dozens of worlds that faced environmental challenges, not just classical death worlds like Earth and Kavak, but planets with unique evolutionary pressures, responded eagerly. Each brought unique technological approaches and biological adaptations that Council species had never considered. The first delegation is arriving, Vaxelhor noted, gesturing toward the main entrance. Representatives from Tharsis, a high-gravity world with a thick, sulfur-rich atmosphere, entered the hall. Their squat, powerful bodies moved with surprising grace despite the lower gravity of the station. Behind them came delegates from Aquaris, a water world where intelligent life had evolved without ever developing metallurgy, yet had mastered biological engineering to an extent that astonished Earth scientists. One by one, the new member worlds' representatives entered. Some moved on tentacles, others on multiple legs. Some floated using internal gas bladders. Others rode in environmental suits. Each species had evolved to thrive in conditions the old council would have dismissed as impossible for advanced civilization. High Counselor Alara, one of the few original council leaders to maintain her position through the political upheaval, took Her place at the speaker's podium. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice carrying the weight of history. "Today we witness not just the expansion of our galactic community, but the evolution of our understanding." Chen listened as Alara acknowledged how the arrival of Earth and Kavak had forced the Council to confront its biases, how the Deathworlders had demonstrated that adversity could forge strength rather than prevent advancement. "Our former assumption, that only garden worlds could produce advanced civilizations, has been thoroughly disproven," Alara continued. "We now recognize that different evolutionary paths create different strengths, and that diversity makes our community stronger." The ceremony continued with each new world formally accepting membership in the Galactic Assembly. As they did, information about their unique contributions to galactic knowledge displayed on large screens around the hall. The technological advances alone had been revolutionary. Earth's medical techniques, developed to deal with a species prone to injury on a high-gravity world, had improved treatment outcomes across all Council worlds. Kavaki materials science, created to withstand their planet's extreme conditions, had revolutionized spacecraft construction. The new members brought equally valuable innovations. Tharsis had developed energy systems that operated efficiently in highly corrosive environments. Aquarius offered biological computing far beyond anything previously known. "They need us," Vaxelhor observed quietly, more than they ever realized. Chen nodded. "And we need them. That's the point they missed before." After the formal ceremony ended, Chen and Vaxelhor made their way through the reception area, greeting representatives from both new and established worlds. The former Council powers, now just one faction within the larger assembly, watched from their diminished positions. "Ambassador Chen," called a voice. Chen turned to see Representative Sorval approaching, the same counselor who had been implicated in the sabotage plot a year earlier. He had survived the political fallout, though with greatly reduced influence. "Representative Sorval," Chen acknowledged with a diplomatic nod. "How are you finding the new arrangement?" Sorval's head crest flattened slightly, a sign of discomfort in his species. "Different," he admitted, "though I must concede, the technological exchanges have benefited even my world." "Progress often feels uncomfortable," Chen replied. "But adaptation is survival." As Sorval moved away, Vaxelhor clicked his mandibles in amusement. "He still fears you." "Us," Chen corrected, "but fear can evolve into respect, given time." Later that evening, Chen stood at the same viewport where she and Vaxelhor had shared drinks a year earlier. The view had changed. The station now orbited a different star, one chosen for its neutral position between Earth, Kavak, and the original Council worlds. Vaxelhor joined her, carrying 2 glasses. "Earth whiskey," he said, offering one to her. "I've developed a taste for it." Chen accepted, with a smile. "To adapting. To thriving," Vaxelhor countered, raising his glass. As they looked out at the stars, Chen reflected on their journey. When they had first walked into the Council chamber, they had been seen as dangerous curiosities, barbarians from hell planets. Now they stood at the center of a galactic revolution, having transformed how the civilized worlds viewed strength, resilience, and progress. "Our worlds tried to kill us," Chen remarked. "They made us who we are. We didn't just survive our death worlds, we learned from them. And now the galaxy learns from us," Vaxelhor added. Behind them, the reception continued. Representatives from worlds that would never have met under the old order exchanged ideas, formed alliances, and planned joint ventures. Species that evolved in fire mingled with those born in ice. Beings adapted to crushing pressure conversed with those who lived in near vacuum. The true lesson of the Deathworlders had finally been understood. It wasn't physical capabilities that made them terrifying. It was their ability to transform deadly challenges into opportunities for growth. The galaxy would never be the same again. And from the perspective of the 2 Deathworlders who had started it all, that was exactly as it should be.